Hello everyone and welcome to another Commander Tactics Deck Tech. My name's Pope. In this video, we're going to be going all out, building with almost no budget restrictions, and our commander is going to be the Buy a Box promo from the upcoming set Athreos Beyond Death, and that is Athreos Shroud-Veiled. But wait, maybe you've acquired Athreos and want to build him as your commander, but would rather see the more budget-friendly version? Have no fear, because alongside this video, we're going to be releasing another deck tech, keeping tried and true to our budget-friendly parameters. So after this, go check that video out to see how versatile you can build this Orzhov god. Athreos gets his second card iteration with Athreos Shroud-Veiled costing 4, a white and a black. He has Indestructible, and as long as your devotion to black and white is under 7, he isn't a creature. But the real sauce is in his next ability. At our end step, we put a coin counter onto any creature on the battlefield. When that creature dies or gets put into exile, we return that creature to our side of the field. For this deck, we're going to be digging our heels deep into the Reanimator strategy. By getting our best creatures into the graveyard early, we can bring them out for a fraction of the cost and get a quick advantage. These creatures are going to bring extremely impactful ETB effects as well as exit triggers to get the most from our commander. And along the way, we're going to drain our opponent's life total in order to gain an edge and pull out some easy victories. And this entire deck can be picked up today for the bold price of only $550. But now let's dive in, taking a look at the powerful creature, ETB, and exit effects we're going to be utilizing, starting with Ashen Rider, Runescarred Demon, and Massacre Worm. First and foremost, you are going to notice that our CMC of our creatures is exceptionally high. But using all of our Reanimator abilities and spells, we're going to get them into our graveyard and cast them for substantially less than what they actually require. All three of these creatures are going to give us awesome ETB effects, and some of them give us nice exit effects. Ashen Rider, whenever enters the battlefield or dies, so we get both, we are going to get to exile target permanent, and that can be anything, a planeswalker, a land, any problem on the battlefield. Runescarred Demon, whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to tutor up any card straight to our hand. And Massacre Worm, whenever this creature enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control are all going to get -2/-2 until the end of turn. And whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, they're going to lose 2 life. So Massacre Worm coming down as a mini board wipe, but also going to do lots of damage. Next, we have 3 powerful creatures that when they die, they're going to give us great effects, and that's Kakusho the Evening Star, Wormcoil Engine, and Hallowed Spirit Keeper. Kakusho, whenever it dies, each opponent is going to lose 5 life, and we're going to gain life equal to the life lost. Reanimating Kakusho can be an absolutely devastating way to take our opponent's life down quickly and easily, especially if we have a sack outlet on board. Wormcoil Engine, this 6 CMC artifact with Death Touch and Lifelink, so not only is it a great defender, but also going to help us regain some life. Whenever it dies, we're going to create a 3/3 worm artifact token that has Death Touch and another one that has Lifelink. And Hallowed Spirit, whenever it dies, we're going to put X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creature cards in our graveyard. If we are able to use Athreos' ability to get a coin counter on these creatures, whenever they die, they're just going to come straight back to the battlefield, and we're going to get their effects again. Next up, we have 4 sack outlets to ensure our creatures do die when we want them to. Yahenni, Undying Partisan, Viscera Seer, Phyrexian Altar, and Ashnod's Altar. Yahenni, Undying Partisan, legendary vampire with haste. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1 counter on it, and then we can sacrifice another creature to give Yahenni indestructible until the end of turn. Viscera Seer, sacrifice a creature, we get to scry 1. Phyrexian Altar, 3 mana artifact, we get to sacrifice a creature to get 1 mana of any color, and Ashnod's Altar, similar effect, except we're going to get 2 colorless for each creature we sacrifice. Having a sack outlet on board and free is super important to make sure we get what we want when we want it. And with all the tokens we're going to be creating, we're going to be able to scry and generate tons of mana throughout the game. And rounding out this team, we have 2 creatures that are going to help enable this deck to work more efficiently with Teysa Karlov and Crick, son of Yawgmoth. Teysa synergizes so well with this deck as we're going to having tons of death triggers. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And as an added benefit, creature tokens will have vigilance and lifelink. With Teysa on board, all of the creatures I presented earlier are just going to double dip and go absolutely crazy. Kakusho is going to deal 10 damage to each opponent, and we are going to gain a boatload of life. Tons of worm coil tokens coming onto the battlefield, but you get the idea. And then Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, for 4 and 3 black Phyrexian mana. He's got lifelink. For each black mana in a cost, we can pay 2 life rather than pay that mana, so basically converting all black mana to Phyrexian. And whenever we cast a black spell, we're going to put a +1/+1 counter on to Crick. Not much to say here. Crick is a bomb and can make casting things so easy, even at the cost of life. We're going to be gaining a lot of life throughout the game, so he is just going to allow us to cheat in so many big spells. And one last card I did want to mention here, and that is Strionic Resonator. Strionic Resonator for 2 mana, we can pay 2 and tap it to copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for those copies. So we can actually use Strionic Resonator to copy Athreos' triggered ability, putting 2 coin counters out and enabling us to double up on what creatures we're going to get to bring back to the battlefield onto our side. Strionic is super powerful and can lead to us having a massive board state if it is not dealt with. But now let's take a look at all the Reanimator spells we're going to be casting to help bring our big bomb army back from the grave to the battlefield. Starting things off with Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, and Reanimate. Each of these going to bring a creature back from our graveyard for no more than 2 mana. Both costing 1 and a black. Animate Dead and Dance of the Dead are very similar cards, bringing a creature back from our graveyard to the battlefield. Animate Dead is going to give the creature -1/-0, and Dance of the Dead is going to put an untap clause on it and give it +1/+1. Reanimate for only a black, we get to put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield underneath our control, but we do lose life equal to its CMC, so if we're bringing out a big boy, it is going to make us pay with a lot of life. Our next 3 animator spells, Corpse Dance, Whip of Erebos, and Chainer, Dementia Master. Corpse Dance, instant speed, 2 and a black, we're going to get to return the top creature of our graveyard to the battlefield. That creature is going to get haste until the end of the turn, and we're going to exile it at the beginning of the next end step. With Athreos on board, we can actually manipulate Corpse Dance to where we do exile our creature, but instantly get it back thanks to Athreos' coin counter. At the beginning of our end step, both triggers will go on the stack, that's Corpse Dance and Athreos. We'll have Athreos put his coin onto the creature first, then Corpse Dance will resolve, exiling our creature and instantly bringing it back. And then if we want to make this all happen again, Corpse Dance does have buyback for 2. Whip of Erebos, legendary enchantment artifact for 4 mana, 2 a black and a black. We can tap it, return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, again, gets exiled at the beginning of the next end step, basically just Corpse Dance but on an enchantment artifact. And Chainer, original Chainer, Dementia Master, all nightmares are going to get +1/+1, then we can pay 3 black, pay 3 life, and put target creature card from any graveyard into play under our control. The creature is a black nightmare in addition to its other types, and whenever Chainer leaves play, we remove all nightmares from the game. It's good to note that Chainer can be activated at instant speed and multiple times, so if we need to get a bunch of creatures on to the board, we absolutely can. Next, we have Exhume, Victimize, and Living Death, going to pull more things from our graveyard onto the battlefield. Exhume is going to allow each player to put a card from his or her graveyard onto the battlefield for only 2 mana. We're going to have big creatures into our graveyard quickly, so hopefully we're going to get the most benefit from this Exhume. With Victimize, we're going to choose 2 target creature cards in our graveyard. We're going to sacrifice 1 creature on the board to bring those 2 back. We can sacrifice a 1/1 token and get back 2, 7, or 8 CMC creatures for only 3 mana. And Living Death, essentially going to make every player swap their graveyard creatures with their creatures on the board. Depending on the board state, this can absolutely be seen as a board wipe. And lastly, our 2 white Reanimators with Karmic Guide and Revelark, 2 combo pieces as well in this deck. Karmic Guide for 3 a white and a white. Whenever Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, we're going to return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, and this can be any creature. And Revelark When Revelark leaves the battlefield, we're going to return 2 target creatures with power 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. And if you're unfamiliar with the Karmic Guide Revelark combo, I broke this combo down in my Teysa Karlov deck tech. I'll link that below and post it here on the screen now in case you want to see how exactly that works. But now let's take a look at the portion of this deck where we are going to drain our opponent's life down in case we run into graveyard hate or something that affects all of our reanimator spells, starting things off with Athreos' other iteration, God of Passage, Blood Artist, and Cruel Celebrant. Original Athreos for 1, a white and a black. As long as our devotion to white and black is less than 7, Athreos isn't a creature, just like the new Athreos. And whenever another creature you own dies, return it to your hand unless a target opponent pays 3 life. We are going to be sacking a lot of creatures, getting a lot of triggers with Athreos on the board, and making our opponents either let us get value or losing 3 life. Blood Artist, a staple in most black aristocrat decks. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, that's any creature, we're going to make a target player lose 1 life and we're going to gain 1 life. And Cruel Celebrant, whenever it or another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent is going to lose 1 life and you are going to gain 1 life. All of these drain effects will add up because we are going to have creatures going in and out of the graveyard as much as we possibly can. Next up, we are also running Plaguecrafter and Fleshbag Marauder to ensure our opponents get rid of the creatures that have those coin counters that we want to bring back to our side. Plaguecrafter and Fleshbag, almost the same text. When they enter the battlefield, each player is going to sacrifice a creature. Plaguecrafter, a little bit souped up. They can also sacrifice planeswalkers, and each player who can't has to discard a card. And then to absolutely make sure we are controlling the board and making sure our opponent doesn't hold on to anything that we want, we're also running Dictate of Erebos and Grave Pact. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent is going to sacrifice a creature. With all the sack outlets and tokens we can throw away, we are going to have control of the board state and lock it down with these enchantments in play. And lastly, we have 3 finishers for this deck: Debt to the Deathless, Torment to Hellfire, and Exsanguinate. Each of these sorceries going to make our opponents lose a ton of life or just kill them outright depending how much we can put into the X value. Debt to the Deathless for a white, a black, and then X. Each opponent is going to lose 2 times the X value, and we are going to gain life equal to the life lost this way. So if we aren't able to finish games out, this is definitely going to put us leagues ahead of everybody because we're going to be gaining tons of life. Torment of Hellfire, we're going to pay a black, and X. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent is going to lose 3 life unless they either sacrifice a permanent, non-land, or discard a card. And Exsanguinate, each opponent is simply going to lose X life, and we are going to gain life equal to the life lost this way. Generating infinite mana in this deck using our altars or other sack outlets is very possible, so these are perfect finishers to round out those games. But now that we've seen the bones of this deck, let's take a look at what else is inside the 99. Starting things off with the removal and control, we're running 4 targeted removal, 4 board wipes, and 5 edict effects. This is going to ensure the board state is under our control and we're getting the creatures with the coin counters on to our side as fast as possible. Our card drawing advantage in this deck comes in the form of 5 or 6 card draw spells and then 5 card advantage spells. Do keep in mind that the graveyard is our friend in this deck, so when we can get creatures into the graveyard, that is actually a benefit for us. Without being in green, our ramp package in this deck comes in a variety of other forms, but we are going to have no issue generating a ton of mana to cast those big spells as soon as possible. Executing a win with this deck has a ton of options and flexibility. We can generate a ton of mana and cast our big X spells. We can combo off with things like the Karmic Guide Revelark combo to drain all of our opponents out at the same time. And if that doesn't work, we can reanimate our big bomb spells that are going to drain our opponents out, like Kakusho and Grey Merchant, and then win by draining our opponent's life down to 0. Obviously, this deck is built to win games and not make friends, so if you are considering building it or just looking for potential options to add to your deck, of course, cater it to your play group. And as mentioned earlier, if you are looking for budget alternatives for this deck, there is actually another video that was released at the exact same time as this video, going over a budget version of this deck. So go check that video out and see how these two decks stack up to one another. But that is going to wrap up this unrestricted Orzhov powerhouse of a deck. New Athreos has such a cool ability, and we are going to try to abuse it as much as we can in order to get the most benefit. But what cards do you think that we should play? What would you run? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this content and want to know when our next deck tech goes live, make sure you hit that like button and make sure you hit that subscribe button. A new deck tech goes live every Friday at 9 AM Central. If you're a Twitter user, you can head over there, drop us a follow at EDH Tactics. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you for the next one.